And welcome to another episode of the Infotech Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Huber. For our video users, my virtual background is broken today. So this is where I actually am. For those online that are just audio only, I'm sorry, but you won't know what I just mentioned. My guest today is a cyber expert. His company is Hire a Cyber Pro. He's a veteran, and this is going to be a really interesting episode for those, whether you're in security or not. I'm really excited about today, and I want to welcome Brent Gallo, or is it Gallo?
Hey, nice to see you, Jimmy. It's Gallo, like the wine or salami, or I get
Oh,
Gallo when I'm in
excellent.
Texas. So
Okay.
it's okay.
I,
It's all
I
good.
always throw it out there and then I either fix it or I don't in post. And this one I probably won't because you took it like a champ. So no,
It's
I'm
all
I'm
good.
really
You're
excited for
cool.
you to be here today. Sometimes I do my own intro pretty much every time for the guest, but I'm sure I left a bunch of stuff out. So take some time and tell us who is Brent and a little bit about your background and your story.
Thanks for having me today, Jimmy. So my background, I've been in cyber since 2014. Like I said, I got involved in the Air Force, and that's really where it all started. I had the opportunity to work with the National Security Agency doing foreign intel collection, so very offensive heavy. And when I got out in 2020, I worked for the Department of Energy. So I'm in the Oak Ridge and Knoxville, Tennessee area now. And I started Hire Cyber Pro as a side hustle in 2021, and I've taken it to full time since
Nice.
2025. So it's been a lot of learning, a lot of growth, and a lot of success this year, and hoping for more success in the future.
Yeah, no, that's great. So just curious, what made you go from, the technical guy that's working for companies and then start your own thing? Because most people, I think, in your position are just fine at a desk or a cubicle, banging out projects, probably making a good living, lots of benefits, whatnot. You can work remotely, flexible, all those things for the thousands of other security people in that industry. But you checked all those boxes, but then said, "Hey, I want to start my own thing." What was the linchpin, or describe how that process worked?
So there's a lot of factors. So I have a family, so flexibility is key for me. I got young kids. My wife, she comes from a background of social work and therapy, so she's seen people, unfortunately, right. Life comes to an end, and she wants to live now, and so I agree with that mindset, and we're living now. So we like to travel and things like that, and to be
Nice.
able
Yeah.
to have that flexibility, afford to travel, bring our whole family along. For example, this summer we went to Crater Lake in the Redwoods and Lawson Volcanic out in Southern Oregon and California there.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great trip. So we want to live now, and work hard, play hard, kind of. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, in my own journey at Infotech, it's gotten more and more flexible as I've trained more people and hired more people. It's
Hmm.
not always perfect, but yeah, I got time to record podcast episodes, and like
Yeah.
was not a thing a couple of years ago. So no, I love that, and yeah, I just in the short time I've gotten to know you, you seem to be a really down to earth guy that really wants to help others and serve people in the capacity of security. And I think that comes across, which is just huge these days in a world of fake AI, bots everywhere. People want to know who they're working with. So I think you'll definitely do well, as it sounds like you already have started. So um, we talked a little bit about your area where you live, and there's some really cool things about the Oak Ridge and the Tennessee area there. Go into a little bit of that because you mentioned that on one of our first calls, and it kind of blew me away. No pun intended.
Oh yeah, so not very many people know about the Oak Ridge or Knoxville area, but in Oak Ridge is actually where the Manhattan Project started. To develop our nuclear weapons during World War II. Oak Ridge area is called the Secret City, actually. And when I was working for the Department of Energy at the Y-12 National Security Complex, I learned a ton about the history there and the continued mission that they have. Even so much interesting things like a lot of the older buildings were made of brick and masonry, and actually, it was a lot of women who did those jobs at the time. And I learned
Really?
you could, yeah, find the imperfections in the sections, and then I guess a foreman would come in and help like fix it up. So there's like little tidbits like that. That's kind of cool. But continuing, especially with President Trump and his initiatives on nuclear energy, I got a list of companies here. nanonuclear energy. They're developing microreactors, BWXT enrichment. We're building new centrifuges, assemblies. There's tons of stuff coming through here. Other microreactor companies, Triso and X Energy, building commercial facilities for advanced small modular nuclear reactors. The Hermes nuclear reactor project. So there's
Wow.
tons of energy and enrichment types of things coming to this area. So it's exciting time for
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, it seems to be somewhat of a controversial topic when I think nuclear is by far the best source of energy. I mean, yeah, we want to get off of coal and gas, and there's all the green energy movements, but aside from a couple of bad instances that I think they've pretty much fixed around nuclear, I'm no expert, but it seems to be that's the way to go going forward. So that's really exciting to see that's right in your backyard, and you can kind of see some of those things, come to fruition. All right. So we're here to talk about security. Obviously, Hire a Cyber Pro is your bread and butter. So explain, I guess, to our audience what exactly is your niche or specialty, or what's your ideal client if people want to know more about you and kind of what your wheelhouse.
Great question, Jimmy. So definitely my wheelhouse is CMMC right now. I'm a lead assessor. I've done over 25 assessments and mock assessments. And then I'm also helping customers, including defense industrial based customers and MSPs with their customers through implementing CMMC, getting ready for NIST 800 171 R2 and getting people ready for their assessment. So very heavy into NIST right now. A lot is happening, especially with the CMMC pause right now. The Department of War, Office of Information Security, is taking a look at the assessment portion of the process, and but there's still requirements there. So don't forget that we still got to protect CUI. Still got your contract requirements. So there's been a lot of craze in that space right now.
Yeah. So let's back up just a little bit in case you're not in the tech world deep into cyber. CMMC is a cybersecurity maturity model certification, right? So this is a directive, a federal law, I believe, directive for larger businesses that, there's a defense framework that was designed to, what, I guess, protect sensitive,
Yep.
unclassified info.
Yep. Protect our supply chain is the biggest thing. Yep.
Okay. Okay. And so, yeah, there are all these rules in place. Infotech actually has a client that we discovered they didn't even know they were required to have this.
No.
Fortunately, my ops director is a veteran as well, so he was all into this stuff. And then, yeah, recently there came out with a pause, which I thought, oh, we don't have to do anything anymore, which is not exactly true, right? So what is this pause, and how is it different now than it was, before that came out?
So the pause is only a pause on the assessment requirement. So as companies are getting ready and the Department of Defense is putting out, contracts and bids, there's has been an increase in requirements to be CMMC Level 2 certified. And that certification comes from a third-party assessment organization. That's called a C3PO. And they bring in an assessment team, review your system security plan, configuration, setup, and everything to make sure you meet all 110 requirements of NIST 800 171.
110 requirements?
Yes, and
Holy smoke.
320 assessment objectives. So it is very
Wow.
detailed. Assessments typically take, in my experience, 2 to 3 days, but they can take longer depending on the complexity of the customer. So
Okay.
it is a process.
Yeah. Well, this makes sense now because our client is a trucking logistics company, right? So
Hmm.
that's supply chain for sure, which is why they would fall under this bracket.
Yep.
So are you working then with internal IT teams? Are you working directly with C-suite? How do you fit in for a company that maybe is looking to, I guess, you get certified and then it renews, I assume? You're doing project work to make sure one of those objectives is hit, or how do you fit in?
So I typically come into small IT teams because a lot of these companies don't have the background or expertise to meet these compliance requirements. So I've worked with 1 man, 2, 3 man shops and really bring the compliance portion to the table. And then I work with them to get everything configured. I also work with companies who have no IT team at all, and I bring in engineers to set up their Microsoft GCC High environments, for example,
Okay.
and also work. together with MSPs, right? So the MSP is running the technical side, and I'll run the compliance side to get the client ready.
Yeah, that's a great one-two punch because obviously Infotech's an MSP, so we're kind of jacks of all trades, but
Hmm.
we have the client trust, right? So we'll find something like this, like, hey, you guys need to certify and get the thing. In this case, they didn't even know what it was, like they had no idea, and so we get to come in and look like the hero by bringing in Brent, right? And so,
Exactly.
what's that look like? I mean, break it down for us. Is this like a 6 week? 6 month? I mean, is this a 4 figure project, 5 plus figure? I mean, what's it look like? I guess it probably
Yeah,
depends on where they're at, but
yeah, depends on the customer and where they're at. But a lot of folks are really just starting from the beginning, so there is a lot of work to do. Typically, a 6 month project or longer. It depends on how fast the customer needs to move. This is not something that you can get done in 60 days, where you submit for a contract, right? You have that 60-day window where you need to be, certified by the time that contract is awarded. That's definitely not happening. So if anyone says they get you certified in 60 days, I wish you good luck. So it is a
maybe a
process.
red flag if somebody
Yeah,
leads
maybe a
with
red
that.
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, if it's something you need to pursue, you want to separate yourself from other companies, strategic advantage, things like that. It does take time to implement and do right, and there's no shortcuts around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah. No,
work.
I believe it. I mean, we've seen, I mean, anything with the federal government's going to be a ton of check boxes, right? But I think the goal around it is something that, these companies should be doing a lot of this already, right? It's not like they should be
Yes,
moving heaven and earth to make changes. You're just certifying what should already be in place. And if it's not coming out of this, I would think they would be in a way better position regardless of whether they have to do it or not, right?
definitely. Yeah. So these requirements have been in place since 2017, and the whole reason we have CMMC is bringing in the checkers, right? Because a very small percentage of companies were actually meeting all 110 requirements, and we've had several. Intelligence leaks, right? You look at, or sorry, not intelligence leaks, but supply chain issues. Look at China's, J-20 aircraft, right? It looks very similar to our, F-22, right? And the
Yeah.
J-30. So, right,
Suspiciously similar.
suspiciously, right? So it's about, tightening up our supply chain and, making sure contractors actually do what they say they're, supposed to do per contract. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of the pain right now is really technical debt that should have been, implemented over time.
Sure.
So, it's a big number to implement right now. Some companies between, the 50K, 150K for most probably, plus the assessment cost. So it's a good chunk, right? Nothing, we can just slide under the table, but with what has to happen, it's what needs to happen to continue to keep our warfighters number one on the battlefield.
Yeah. No, I think it's a worthy cause and it should be across the board accepted. But if you're a smaller business on the lower end of that spectrum and you got to come up with 150 large, that could be that isn't a small thing, right? So how are businesses dealing with this? Are there grants available? Is there financial assistance for the smaller companies? Or is this just, hey, we have these dates. This is just another cost of doing business. We factor it into our budget and, it's like anything else.
So right now, it's just like any other expense. You can, kind of put it into your contract, right? What you expect to get out of it in return to, meet the requirement. Um, but there have been some proposals about grants, some proposals about providing dedicated environments for folks to, stand up and work in that are provided by the government instead of having to stand up your own environment, for each business. So there
Okay.
are proposals like that. But that all does take time and money and Congress to really move on that, and
Yeah.
so
What could
it's a
go wrong?
mess. Yeah, yeah. It can go wrong. Yeah. So it's not an easy problem to solve. And, we have a pause now. This isn't the first pause that there's been in CMMC. So as demands change, right, the adversary, the threat changes, these pauses are, expected in my view, but we'll come out with whatever they decide. And hopefully the best thing is to, keep protecting our classified, or sorry, our controlled and classified information well.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. So would you say these pauses are moving the goalpost, or is it just, giving people more time, or both? Because obviously they aren't random, right? There's
Mhm.
some reasoning behind it.
So I think it's a little bit of both. So we were expecting a surge of assessments come November, right, the end of the fiscal year, and when phase two is supposed to roll in. So this pause is a gift, in my opinion, right? We got 60 days to get our stuff together and see what happens next. I think that there could be some meaningful changes on the assessment side after the pause. We'll see what that looks like. Um, I think also as an assessor myself, the C3POs and assessors, we are doing our job. We're not to blame for the madness. We're just one cog in the machine. There's a lot
Fair.
of crap, even before you get to the assessment. That's messy, but we'll see what happens. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you're just the messenger, but you're the face of it. So I could see
we
where
are
you
the
could be the
face.
brunt of some
Yeah,
frustration. Yeah. How,
yeah.
how do you deal with that? Because I mean, you're not just coming in for a weekend. This is a multi-month thing with, you're the new guy, but probably the cog of all of this, which I think some C-suite people would probably see 150 grand to do what? We don't need any of this stuff. Who's this Brent guy? And like you could be put in some sticky situations. So have you seen that already, or how are you dealing with that?
So there's definitely growing pains with some customers, more or less, right? Um, some, don't want to spend the money, but you got to see that the risk is huge, right? Like if you're not following this protocol, especially if you've been supposed to be following it since 2017, there's what's called the False Claims Act, and that's basically the DIDCAT can come in, the DoD, and they can do an assessment, and if you aren't even close to your 110 controls, like you've testify that you have been for X number of years, you can get a significant fine and, kind of blacklisted, right? So
Well,
you probably
yeah.
wouldn't be doing business for a good while. So, and have a fine. One company recently in the Huntsville area, I forget the name, but they had a 500K fine against them. That's
Come
that's what they
on.
s- that's what they settled on, right? So I'm
Oh
sure
my
I'm sure
goodness.
the number was higher, and
So
so
they
and
were
they're
fraudulently reporting things that weren't accurate, it sounds like.
exactly.
Yeah, well, you're gonna
Exactly.
get, yeah, that goes across the board. I think that's a bad idea, bad business
Yes.
practice,
So,
especially with the federal government.
yeah, so there's big risk there, right? There are some growing pains, right? And it's not that people, want to do the wrong thing. It's just they're just not trained or educated in the space yet,
Sure.
right? Like, what are
Yeah,
the requirements, right? I told you there's 110, 320 objectives. Like,
sure.
there's a lot to that, and so it's really just education, explaining, why you need the requirement, how it increases your security, and like you said before, all these companies they are better off and more secure because we've implemented these controls to protect our supply chain.
Yeah. I completely agree. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that companies have to rely on, the stick versus the carrot. But you see that in other things too. Like you mentioned NIST. I mean, Infotech comes across PCI and HIPAA a lot. Not to pick on the medical industry, but no one cares about HIPAA because it's not really enforced, right? And it's things
Mhm.
that should be happening, and our customers are HIPAA compliant. But if there's no stick, it's like, well, it's hard to build the value and understand the cost of staying compliant when, if you haven't been burned. So, what are, I guess, the implications? Obviously, you can get a huge fine here, but I mean, is it enough so that you can kind of thread the needle between motivating people to understand the reasoning why and get on board versus just doing it because they have to? And it's always like an uphill battle.
So the carrot in this sense is also contract eligibility, right? So the phase two was also rolling in that CMMC level two requirement. So you have to have that certification to even be able to bid on said contract. So there is a carrot out there that will separate you from other contractors, but it is a step up to meet that requirement.
Sure, sure. Well, I would think that this job for you is going to be a lot of education and the technical wherewithal, So, yeah, I could see those. I mean, and I assume you're not doing a bunch of them at a time. You probably have a limit on how many you take on at the same time. What do you see the runway for this being? I mean, there's a pause now, but is this just going to be an ongoing thing that will always have companies that need to be compliant? Like, is this kind of the future for Hire a Cyber Pro as your one thing, or do you see branching out tangentially into other things too?
So definitely a future here, as it's definitely not going away. requirements to handle control of classified information, those aren't going away for sure. Companies are going to need to implement, regulations are going to change. There's already NIST 800-171 R3 that's been out for a little while. And ISACA, who's in charge of the training for assessors, they're already training to R3. There's been some complaints that R2 is outdated. Yes, it is a little outdated. So, companies are preparing for revision 2 right now. There's going to be a point where they need to prepare for revision 3. And so that's, another opportunity to,
Ongoing.
yep.
Yeah. Which
And
makes
there's,
sense. I mean, the bad guys
mhm.
aren't getting dumber. So
No, no,
you're
it's,
always reacting and trying to get ahead.
yeah, and it's getting more complex with AI, and current requirements are to recertify every 3 years through a C3PO, and you have to self-attest at least once a year. So
Okay.
there's a whole, continuous monitoring, whole security assessment protocol to maintaining your security program. So it's something that we can't just, do our check boxes and put on the back burner. It's something that has to be, maintained on a monthly basis.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And you mentioned a couple of things there. So NIST and the sanctioning body, I think that puts it on, are those just kind of all the same conversation, or how are those connected? Because we see other small businesses that want to be NIST certified or just gain something. I mean, there's what ISO 27001. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can go after. But I would assume that these are more connected to CMMC than others.
Yeah, so NIST 80171 is the designated level of protection required for controlling classified information. That's per the government. But yeah, if you want to go for different industries, right? Like you said, you're medical folks, then you're going to want to be HIPAA compliant. There is a revision came out, I think it's 2024 for HIPAA. So if you haven't updated in 20 years, there's a new revision there. Take a
Yep,
look at
sure,
it.
sure.
For PCI, right, payment card industry, that if you get into the financial space, folks require the SOC 2 certification very
Yep,
often. So it
sure.
is, or also in universities. I've had a few university customers. They require GLBA requirements, the Graham Leach and Bliley Act. That's always a mouthful.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, and these requirements, right? These have been identified and put together by national level organizations, global organizations for ISO, right? And
okay,
so they're
yeah.
good standards. Their language may be a little bit different, maybe a little bit more strict than others, but they all kind of they all do have the same goal, right? To raise our security, make sure we don't have any blind spots, and to protect our data and financial information from the bad guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And fortunately, the insurance companies, I think, are getting on board with this. It used to
Hmm.
be, Infotech or the MSP would come in as
Yeah.
the bad guy and require it. But now it's like, oh, my agent just said that too. And instead of 3 questions, it's now 40 and 5 pages.
Yes.
And what is all
Hmm.
this stuff? And you can connect the dots a lot easier for a CFO or somebody who's got these questions and isn't technical, right? So it seems like the industries of the world are finally catching up to the point where, like, not only is security kind of a nice to have, but it's just a baseline, a cost of running business, right?
Exactly. And yeah, and speaking of the insurance agency, that's really changed in the last couple of years, right?
Oh
In
yeah,
early 2020s, everybody's getting hit by ransomware and really getting wiped out. And therefore, those insurance companies are getting wiped out because they don't have,
yeah, it's
they're not making
reactive.
any money.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So those increased questionnaires, increased requirements, typically start at insurance. And for me, and I'm sure you and your business, Jimmy, starting with, what are your insurance requirements? How can we reduce your bill, your yearly bill, by increasing your security, right? Reduce your risk of a cyber attack in general. And another conversation you should probably have with your folks is, do you have enough insurance, right, for your
Yeah,
risk? Because a lot of
yeah,
people, hey, I get a blanket, $1 million, $5 million policy, but doing the analysis to really figure out, do I have enough? Do I have too much? Where am I not covered? That's really a next step that very few people take.
yeah. I read another interesting article that said something like 40 some percent. I don't remember the exact number of claims don't get paid out, even though they
Hmm.
have cyber. There's something that wasn't covered or wasn't good enough,
Yep.
and so it's not just having the policy, but it's proving that you have enough documentation and compliance to actually get paid, right? And I think that's where our industry is definitely heavy into that. which was not a thing 5 years ago. I mean,
Mm-mm.
maybe a little bit, but now it's all about compliance, even selling it as a service, right? So in your world, coming in from doing these CMMC projects, do you get drawn into some of those other conversations? Because I feel like it's all just different cogs on the same, or different spokes in the same wheel, right? It's all pushing people to be more cyber intensive, security minded, and the same outcome basically.
Yes, yeah, we definitely do get I wouldn't say dragged in, but asked to
Yeah,
help with other
sure.
things like insurance, other frameworks. Hey, we're going after this business, or somebody has a third party requirement. For example, I was helping a customer. They're working with a large national bank, and they're actually having an AI policy pushed down to them. And there were security and program requirements from this bank to make sure they were using AI safely, make sure their data was protected safely. So it's not just on the government side that's increasing requirements. It's all over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild world we live in, and with so much noise out there, especially you mentioned AI earlier. I mean, that's a whole other podcast just to talk
Hmm.
about how AI is making, if you have a process, it seems like it's making it way better with less people. If you don't, though, it's almost like it exacerbates the problem. And in your world, I would think that would be exponentially worse because the bad guys are all using AI already, right? And so do you see some AI requirements, say, or maybe a framework around the best use cases for that inside this context? Because it's so new that I don't think there's any rules yet, which is a huge problem. It's kind of the Wild West.
Yes, it's definitely the Wild West. CMMC itself doesn't have and NIST and HER 171 doesn't have AI specific rules. So as long as you're using AI within a federal, FedRAMP approved space, you can use it. Right, you're managing that government data correctly, documenting it correctly. Those are some guardrails, but outside of a FedRAMP environment, it is kind of the Wild West, right? What are the use cases? How is this company using my data, securely? Just thinking of the business process, right? You talked about some things are worse with AI, some things are better with AI. It's a lot of discovery, experimentation right now, but I think it's overall good if you are implementing it correctly and safely, right? There's a whole new ISO certification on AI. There's also the NIST
Nice.
AI playbook, which kind of is a governance framework for companies to incorporate and manage AI. And then there's also a NIST RMF for companies to develop AI safely. So there are
Nice.
some compliance and guidelines out there, but very seldom used right now. Like I'm sure there's a lot of companies, hey, use
Imagine
our
that.
AI product, right? And
Yeah.
then I'm knocking on the door. I have another guy. He's kind of specializes more in AI than I do, but he goes to these companies and said, "Hey, I see you're using AI. What do you have for security on the back end?" And there's nothing there, right? So he's working with
Yeah.
these
It's
companies.
awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's working with these companies to give them, put in place security and governance programs, so that company can go to their customers and say, "Hey, here's our AI product. Yes, it's safe, and this is how we've protected it." So as a
Yeah.
a differentiator
I
for
love
their
that.
product. Hmm.
Yeah, we'll pull links to all that what you just mentioned there, and we'll have that in the show notes because I think it's good for people to at least have somewhere to start, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Hmm.
Everybody's got an opinion on AI. It's super easy. People have ChatGPT. They think it's the new Google, and that's about it. And it's not even a paid version. Like there are
Yeah.
so many easy ways to get really in trouble. And it's not malicious, but people don't know what they don't know. So yeah, I would love to add those resources, and that's a great thing to note. Now, you've got a promotion coming up that I want to make sure there's a readiness assessment here in September. So
Yes.
we're timing this. So this, if you're listening to this and it's a new podcast release, we're about a week away. So tell us what that means and what our listeners can do about that.
Awesome. So we're providing an OSC, so Organization Seeking Certification for CMMC Readiness Workshop. So right now during the pause, this is a gift. For we don't, the pressure is eased off a little bit, and so this workshop is to help you reflect upon your system security plan, your configuration, your evidence, and see if hey, am I ready? Right, to really to help you develop a good self assessment. So that's all day one. How to write a good implementation statement. How I'm making sure my scoping is correct. How is my FedRAMP and shared responsibilities matrix? Those are all big details you need to have figured out before you go into an assessment. And the second day of the workshop is more around what's it like to be on the assessment, right? Assessment week. What are the expectations from the C3PO, the assessors? How can you prepare, mentally, physically, have lots of coffee. It's a long day. It's a long day for everybody, long couple days. What do you expect in the assessment room as you're going through the assessment? So there's no surprises
Okay.
and things like that. So it's really
That
all
sounds
about
great.
readiness. Yep. It's September 2nd and 3rd. We have just 15 seats. So it's very personal. Folks can ask questions.
Nice.
And we're actually providing a full mock OSC material for folks to review. So,
Oh,
so
legit.
you have evidence, you have a full system security plan and associated policies, so you can see what ready looks like.
Yeah, that's great. And is this in person then in Tennessee near you, or is it online, or how
All
does it
remote,
work?
all remote.
Okay.
Join me
So like
remotely.
a webinar series kind of?
Yep, yep. So
Okay.
yep, online remote training, 2 full days.
And it's free to attend, or you buy
Not
tickets, or how does it work?
not free. There are some seats. So there's a standard seat for the training and a premium seat for additional consulting after the workshop.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah. If it's free, I think people kind of get put up a red flag. So I'm glad that it is, you're providing a ton of value. So
Exactly. Yeah, you're
yeah,
gonna
but
learn a
and the goal
lot.
here, yeah. So if they become engaged and they're like, oh crap, like we have a ton of work to do, you're making an easy on ramp then to work with you and your team, right? Like it's not just about, getting the word out there, but if they do discover things, they don't have to go now find a vendor and figure it all out. You've got some options there that you've already done some of the legwork and make that even easier.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Lots of information. Great time to reflect upon. Hey, are we ready or not? Do we need to make some changes? And if you do, we'll help you build a roadmap for what that looks like.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, well, this has been fantastic, Brent. I mean, I've really enjoyed getting to know you and talking through some of these things. My role at Infotech is more just to talk about things and not do them. That's what my team does now that we've grown a little bit. And the compliance around CMMC is just one of those things that I don't have a good grasp on yet. And yet we now are seeing it so much more prevalent everywhere that yeah, we our industry relies on companies and guys like you to, lead us down the path correctly, and it just helps us add a ton of value, to our customers and our listeners today too. So, yeah, we'll definitely add that to our show notes. This will be a lot of notes today because you brought up so many good resources, and hopefully, just if people are listening and maybe they already are CMMC certified or they're going through the pause, and it's just a good reminder, at the baseline of what they're doing and why, all the way to if they're not. Hey, here's a lot of good places to start. If they do want to engage, Brent, what's the best way to get a hold of you or hire a cyber pro and maybe just have a conversation about what that could look like?
So the best way to get in touch, shoot me an email at brentgallo@hirecyberpro.com. You can also go to our website at hirecyberpro.com, submit a contact form and get in touch with myself and the rest of our team.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great. And everyone, hopefully you've gotten some tidbits and some stuff from Brent that you can implement in your own business and at least be more cyber aware in the crazy world that we're all living in. So yeah, it's been fun. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jimmy. Have a good day.